WARD dollar sign, nigga. NAYIMED.
Welcome if you're new, welcome back if you're returning. My name is Nayim. I am your host, and today I want to discuss the relationship between the songwriter and the mainstream artist and the industry in general. I recently came across a clip of BigXthaPlug detailing and explaining that he did not write one word on his hit single, his biggest song, his number one song to date. I think it's called The Largest. It might be called The Biggest. I know it's one of those. And that actually his artist that he has signed wrote that song and he just recited it. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today, I want to say that it's a very commendable thing to do and to volunteer that information coming out the gate, because most artists will not do that. And the reason that most artists will get in their interviews and lie, talking about they write, get in their interviews and perform, be out here not saying anything, not giving any credit to anybody doing anything. You can't look up and find who actually have something to do with the music that they are putting out, is because once people find out that something that you were supposed to be creating, you are calling yourself as a musician, as a singer, as a rapper, as a drum, whatever. Once they find out that it didn't come from you, that it came from someone else, and this is only if you are presenting yourself as a creator. You're not presenting yourself as a performer. You're saying I created something when you're saying I am an artist. You're not saying I'm a performing artist. You're saying that you are a creative person. People tend to not want to be bothered with things that come off as inauthentic. And when you get found out, we saw that with Drake. We see that with a lot of people. When you get found out that this didn't come from you, this is somebody else's work, this is somebody else's art, you're just reciting it. It's inauthentic, and people don't really have that connection to it, because we know that music is a part of everything that we do in our everyday life. Whether you're in the grocery store and they're playing something, you in your favorite clothing store and the music match the kind of clothes that's in there. You at the you're in the elevator and the music takes away from the fact that you're in this steel box death trap that you have no control over. You in your car, whatever you do, music is a part of your everyday life. People use music as an escape. They use music as entertainment, and just music is just everything to a lot of people. That's why it's the number one form of entertainment, and it becomes even more powerful when you put the visual with the music. Now that we got that out the way, let's deal with this first. What is being signed? Plain and simply put, being signed is having contractual obligations to a person or a company. And if it's with a person, it's more than likely going to be attached to a company that you have to fulfill. That is it. If you are independent, that means you don't have contractual obligations that you have to go through these people in order to do your work. The issue with that, people seem to have this misconception. I don't know if it is an issue because it's a common misconception, is that they live in la la land when it comes to writing music, when it comes to being an artist in general, when it comes to especially working with mainstream people. I'm going to be the one to tell you, if you've never heard this before, if you're going to work with any mainstream artist, it's going to come with some type of contract. You cannot freely work with any mainstream artists on, a lot of times it's going to be terms where you might have room to go back and forth, or they might present you with what they want you to agree with. And if you don't agree with that, it just kind of depends on who you're working with, or the label you're working with, or the company you're working with, because they might just say, oh, we're not doing that, we'll move on. Oh, you're asking for too much, we'll move on. And a big problem with that is, when you're dealing with a songwriter who's new, who's never done anything with the mainstream artist, they've never done anything with a conglomerate, with the mainstream company, all this fake information online is telling you to know your worth, which I agree with knowing your worth. I agree with doing good work so you can have the room to negotiate what you want and having those hard boundaries and hard yeses and hard nos. The thing is, because there's such a revolving door of people who are willing to work for free, willing to work for way less you're going to have to be so exceptional and so phenomenal that people will want to respect what you do no matter what, because there's so many people that's willing to do, arguably, it might not even be better. I don't want to say that. There's so many people that's willing to do more, twice as much for half of what you'll do. So it's, unless it's something that they just really want, because everybody is not, and I'm talking about mainstream companies and artists and stuff, everybody is not going to be terrible people where they're telling you like, you can't have this, or you can't do this, or we can't agree to that, or you can't put your name on it. Some people are going to have that integrity and say, you know what, I'm going to give you a credit. I'm going to make sure you get your pub. I'm going to make sure you get a part of this and all of these things. One of the bigger issues with what you sign up for is a lot of people don't have much of a resume. If we're talking about being independent, they don't have a strong enough resume where they can afford to say no. So they get into these situations where they would sign with an artist. And another thing, if you didn't know, it's so layered. It's just like, we could be here all day talking about this, but if you sign with an artist who signed with a major, or you're signed with, if you have any contractual obligations to anybody other than yourself and your company, the work that you do gets first right of refusal from everybody before you can even have a say on how it goes. 600 people get signed a year. Most of those people you'll never hear about. You might hear one song out of those 600 people that get signed every year. And that's because they take those people's music and they give it to their mainstream artists, because the mainstream artists have already proven that they already have a working economy with them. That's not to say that you as a songwriter you're not qualified to be a star, but there's a lot of different things that go into an artist. And a lot of people think it's just, oh, write the song and you give this and I'll get a cut of that. Like, no, they could take every song you make. Look at Party Next Door. When Party Next Door makes music, because he signed to OVO, a lot of Party Next Door's music end up going to Drake, end up going to Rihanna, end up going to a bunch of other people, because in his contractual agreement, being signed as a writer, being signed as an artist as well, because you can be both at the same time. Party Next Door signed up to say, hey, these people can go through my stuff, take what they want, leave me what they don't want, and they can do what they want, but I'll get a little bit of credit. That's how it works. So with BigXthaPlug signing his artist, he said his artist gave him the song. I can agree with that. But he already was in a position to say, that song is hard. I'm going to take that song for myself. And there's not really anything you could do once you sign up for that. That is how real mainstream work in songwriting goes. If you made a mixtape and the song got hot, but or the song was good, if the song got hot, they might throw you a little bone by giving the first part would be, if the song got hot and it was big enough, they would just have somebody, the Baby or Offset or somebody, do the remix with you. If the song was good and they had an idea like, oh, K Michelle with Nicki Minaj situation with anybody want to buy a heart, that was K Michelle first. Or Saweetie with Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice, that Barbie World song from the soundtrack, that was a Saweetie song. That was Saweetie's whole thing. It was like Icy Girl and Ice, like that was hers, and they took it from her because these people are all, anything that they agreed to, they already agreed to it when they put their name on the dotted line. Doesn't matter how good it was, they'll take it and give it to somebody else if they think it could be better, and it can be better. And they do the same thing with producers. So that's one of the realities that you have to look forward to when you sign or when you agree to go work with them people. And you can be like, because a lot of people are chasing the one big placement, the one big person, instead of working on themselves and building themselves up, so where you can put yourself in a position where you don't have to give everything you make away. You don't have to, oh man, that's good, let me take that. Because the feelings that you're going to have inside after your music gets taken from you, given to someone else, and they run off and make millions, and they run off and have all the, they get all the glory and stuff from that. Because we got to be honest. That Let me finish the thought. That's very defeating for a lot of people, and this is why you see a lot of people coming out and complaining. This is why you see a lot of people having these tell-alls and being on Unsung after all of these years, and we're finding out stuff about people that we never would have thought or we never would have imagined, is because nobody really knows what it is like to have to work in an environment and work in a situation where you don't have 100% of the say. That's like, you hear these songs about you hear these stories about like A. Marie with One Thing. If you don't know anything about that, we might do a video on it, because Dark Side is coming back, Paranormal is coming back. I'm waiting on a few things to come in so I can get the sets up. They didn't like the song. They were trying to give the song, they liked the song, my bad. They was trying to get a song away to somebody, and she just straight leaked it. Or other people, and that's when the song blew up and it became one of her like biggest songs. And you hear these stories just over and over and over again. Same thing with, they didn't believe in this song. It came out and it turned out to be like the biggest thing ever. They don't know what they're talking about, because it's all a numbers game and a whatever game to them, because they're chasing numbers when you're trying to do good creations and stuff. But you got to understand that contractual obligations, yeah, your stuff has to be good to a point, but if you can't deliver, which a lot of times is their fault that you cannot deliver, because when you supposed to sign up with them, you're not supposed to be doing all the lifting yourself. They're supposed to provide for you, but some stuff just doesn't connect, but that's something for another day. I do want to add this in before we talk about why fans don't care and why who is delivering the music matters. Is, I've said this when I first started this channel. Rap, the reason why writing matters so much in rap, opposed to R&B, opposed to pop, opposed to country, opposed to any other genre, is because rap is a skill that requires you to know how to write. Singing is not a skill that requires you to know how to write. Pop music and all these other things and all these other genres, they do not require you to know how to write. The whole foundation of rapping and being a rapper in hip hop music is knowing how to put the words together, is knowing how to write. It is built on writing. So the reason why hip hop fans care so much about who wrote the song, and fans don't. Fans only care about what the music sound like. They're consumers. They're there to consume. They're not there to have, like, you have super fans who care, but like the general consensus of a fan is just consumerism. But the reason why people who really love rap and really love hip hop care about who did it is because it's the only genre that requires the authenticity to be there. I don't have to know how to write a song if I'm a good singer. That requires vocal performance. I mean, I don't know nowadays, but that requires being a good vocalist. You don't have to know how to write with any of these other things because it's not that deep in those other things. So when we talk about Big X and people coming out, because I've seen people who are managers and labels and all these kind of stuff saying, oh, they don't care. Nobody cares. It's a banger. That when you see that stuff, that can pull your morale down because you actually care, because you're like, oh, this is my song, this like that. And then it pushes you out of the conversation, which goes back to what your contractual obligations were when we talking about money, which we'll talk about tomorrow, because I don't want to go too deep into it with the money thing today, because that's a whole conversation that needs to be broken down strictly about money when it comes to making music and being in the industry and stuff. But like, you get cut out of a lot of the things when it comes to these songs being big, these people being big, money coming from all over the place, not having your business affairs in order. That's another thing. If you're not signed and you don't have your business affairs in order, at least bare minimum, nobody's gonna want to work with you. That's the fastest way to lose opportunity, is not having your business affairs in order. But who performs the song does matter. Because if we go back into the past and we look at Quentin Miller, you hear a lot of those demos. That what he's saying is okay, but it didn't really sound that great. Nobody even talks about him no more, you know? Like, nobody cares about what the delivery was when it was coming from him, but they liked it when it was coming from Drake because Drake already built that rapport with the audience. That's the only reason that they liked it. If Quentin would have continued to work and continue to put himself out there, but we know that songwriters, they don't do this. I'm one of the only songwriters that talks the way that I talk about music and industry and the everything that's got to do with it, because you might think, oh, what does this have to do with writing and this got to do with music? It's because you as the writer, you have to be there as well as the person that's standing out in the front. And you're going to go through a lot more warfare and a lot more things because people can't see what you're going through because you're behind the scene. And people will discourage you from putting your music out and making your stuff so they can keep you quiet, so they can come off again as authentic. A lot of this stuff just loops into each other. So the stuff that you'll be going through, most songs, they're not going to do this because they don't want to screw their opportunity working with big ass. They don't want to screw up their opportunity to get signed to a label. Not knowing that if you was to work on yourself and get your stuff up, you will be in a position to refuse things. You will be in a position to not have to be bothered with stuff you don't want to, or stuff that's unfair to you. They trick people into believing that, oh yeah, just take the trash and then, you know, something good will come later. Like, no, you might not get a second chance at later. So you got to be prepared and be good for what you got going on now. Last thing I want to say, because I don't want to be too long, I don't even know how long I've been standing here, but like, what is writing? As far as how much do you have to, if somebody was to present a song to you, how much of it do you have to change in order to be considered a writer? I do not consider you getting a whole song and changing 2 or 3 adjectives or 2 or 3 verbs or changing a noun to a pronoun. I don't consider that writing. I don't think that's a sizable enough contribution. Unfortunately, what I feel about it doesn't matter because people have gotten whole songs, requested whole songs, and they went in there and changed 2 or 3 words, and now they get the credit. The problem with that, my head is itching crazy. The problem with that is when you're dealing with mainstream artists and they say, oh, I write, oh, I'm glad I write. What they really mean is they went in there, they changed 2 or 3 words, and they're going to take the bulk of the credit because they're the name that's going to draw the resources in. They're the name that's going to make the project successful, opposed to lifting up and praising the writer. Another thing I forgot to mention is when you get yourself in a situation where you're dealing with a label and you're dealing with the artist that's with the label, so you're dealing with the label, did I say that? I don't know. I just forgot. I just had a brain fart. But like when you're dealing with them, I forgot. Who cares? Like just know that anytime that you get into a situation like those and you're dealing with majors and you're dealing with mainstream artists, you have to come to the table with your business together, and you cannot rely on them to do good business with you. Because most of the time, it's not going to be that great of a business unless you agree to sign with them. Because when you don't have your business affairs in order, that's how you get taken advantage of. That's how you get yourself in trouble, or you get boxed out of the economy and things like that. So like I said, tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about Scarface and what he said on Shannon Sharp about the whole stream thing. And that's when I want to get into the economy of being a songwriter and being in music as a mainstream artist, or just being in music in general as an artist. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Did not want to show up today, but guess what? I showed up, and that's what counts. So, I'll holler.
AYIMEDWARD $, nigga. NAYIMED.